Welcome to the podcast Running Toward. This podcast tells stories of ordinary people who couldn't look away once they saw the hidden crisis in foster care and the families impacted. Our guests share heartbreak that led them to take reluctant and unexpected small, faithful steps toward the most vulnerable in their communities. Not because they had a plan, and not because they felt ready, but because they couldn't unsee their pain. You'll hear how people living normal lives discover that getting closer changed them. Their comfort mattered less, their grip on uncertainty faded, and their faith got feet in quiet, everyday ways. Ending the crisis for one or for all isn't a quick fix. It's a long, slow, often messy journey alongside one of the most overlooked and misunderstood groups in our community. Running Toward gives you a front row seat to the hidden crisis in foster care and the families impacted, and to the ordinary people who choose not to look away. Hey, welcome to the Running Toward podcast. We are excited to kick off May since it is Mother's Day during the month of May. We're going to do a whole month of single foster moms, which is a whole unique space in and of itself. Taking on this space as a single is a huge ask, but we have some incredible ladies this month who are going to be sharing their stories. And so today we're going to start with Susan. And she moved to San Antonio in her early 30s, no family, no connections, and started her career as a physical therapist. And pretty quickly after that, got kind of thrust into the world of foster care and then actively chose it. And so we're going to hear from her today on kind of her ups and downs, her struggles, her triumphs, and just hear the perspective of a single mom fostering. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, coming and sharing your story today.
Thank you for asking me.
So tell me, what does a normal Wednesday look like in your house? What are your kids? What do you do?
Yeah, so I have 6 kids ranging in age from newly 5 and up to almost 12. And so they go to 2 different schools. So mornings are a little bit hectic because the 2 youngest have to be on the bus by 6:45. And then the older ones, we have to be in the car by 7:10 to get to school in time. Let's see, Wednesdays, one of my littles has occupational therapy and speech therapy. So I have to leave work early, go get him, and then rush to go get everybody else from car line. One of the girls has orchestra after school. So we spend a lot of Wednesday in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time we get home, it's time for dinner, bath, maybe some bike riding around the neighborhood. And everybody's in bed by 8-ish.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
The older one stays up until about 9:30. That's his almost 12-year-old privilege. And then I crash after that.
Sure.
So usually crash for an hour, and then I have to get up and actually get stuff done around the house. So
yeah. So that was definitely on your bingo card, is what you're going to be doing in your life.
I had no intentions of having 6 children in with such a close age range between them.
Yeah.
My youngest 4 are all within 4 years of each other.
Yeah.
So I had no intentions of having that many kids in that span of time.
Right.
But I love it. And I looked forward to being a mom. And so I'm trying to remember that this is
what you wanted.
This is what I wanted. Some days I have to remind myself multiple times, but yeah. It's a fun life.
I mean, you full sent the mom thing with 6 kids.
Yes.
For sure.
For sure. For sure.
And then you work, what do you do?
So I'm a professor. I teach at the University of Incarnate Word at physical therapy. So I teach pediatrics, and I'm the pediatric residency director. So yeah, my kids always say that I work with big kids.
Yeah.
So they don't really understand what I do, but they say that I work with big kids.
Yeah. I mean, they're bigger than them. So
they are.
That.
They are. So I have fun. I enjoy what I do, and thankfully I have flexibility in order to be able to go get kids to therapy and pick kids up and all of that.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's flash back. So before any of this was kind of part of your world, what did that word foster care mean to you? Did it have any context in your life?
I mean, it had just a little bit of context. I guess I really, in the past, when I envisioned foster care, I really thought of older children. I didn't necessarily think of infants or even toddlers. Not that I didn't think that they were in foster care, but my general thought was more older kids and families fostering. I did not know anybody who was single fostering. So that wasn't even a thought in my mind when I thought of foster care. I thought of families fostering. And really in my mind, it was like school-age kids and like teenagers.
Right.
That's really what my thought was prior to actually diving into the world of foster care.
And what kind of, if you were picturing that person that was fostering, that person was what?
Usually a stay-at-home mom, honestly.
Yeah.
A stay-at-home mom with some other kids. And that's what I think the picture that I had in my mind was a home with a lot of kids, some of them in foster care, some of them not in foster care, and usually a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of people picture. And that's what a lot of people think is almost a requirement to even get into this space, which hopefully this month we're going to totally debunk because that is not true. I know some incredibly singles who are fostering and doing incredible work with tons of kids. So
for sure.
Debunking that for sure.
Yeah.
So when you moved to San Antonio, kind of when you're coming down here, what were you planning on building in San Antonio?
Yeah. So I moved down here for my job. And so I was in my early-ish 30s. I really don't remember. It was early 30s. I had just bought a house, and I felt like I was going to be here for a while. Like it felt like a stable move. It wasn't someplace where I thought I'm only going to be there a couple of years.
Yeah.
I felt like I was going to be here for a while. So it felt like I was kind of setting down roots to a certain degree. So I was feeling really settled.
Yeah.
But also wanting not to have my life centered around my career. And so I had like a yearning of wanting more, but didn't have a clear idea of what that meant.
And did you have any connections down here in San Antonio?
No.
Yeah.
So my best friend also moved at the same time. We both are PTs, and so we both moved at the same time to work at the same place. So I had my best friend, and that was it.
Yeah.
And I had work acquaintances.
Sure.
But no family and nobody else really here in San Antonio.
Yeah. So even just that's kind of daunting in and of itself, starting a career in a city where you're just kind of basically starting over, building a new community on some level.
Right.
Did you get plugged into a church when you came down here? Did you have any connections in that? Like, did you hear about foster care from any of those kind of spaces or?
Yeah. So I'm Catholic, and I initially was kind of hopping around to different Catholic churches because I was trying to find a church that I felt I wanted to stay. Like I wanted that to be my home church. And I will say that it took me a while to kind of find, what matches for your vibe.
Right.
But I wasn't involved in church.
Yeah.
I went to church every Sunday. I just wasn't involved. Like I wasn't talking to anybody. And I will say that I think that is common for the Catholic Church.
Right.
It's not there. That's a pretty common thing.
Right.
I mean, I will say that was kind of my whole life. Like it wasn't like we talked to people around us.
You go, but it's not a community that you.
Right. Unless you intentionally make it that.
Right.
It wasn't community centered, I guess. And I hate to say that because I think you have to do that for yourself, I think, in the church. So no, I really didn't hear about it in church. Where I heard about it was people at work and friends who were fostering. And I had kind of already started thinking a little bit about foster care and had kind of done some random Google searches on foster care in San Antonio, and then had these friends who were fostering. And kind of that was my first real firsthand experience with people who were actually fostering.
Yeah.
And sort of was able to see how they were doing it and what their life was like and what this meant,
Yeah.
So that was really the first people I knew who actually fostered.
And then also probably as a pediatric PT, you got exposure to kids that were in foster care on some level.
I did. So I worked for a long time in rural Mississippi, and a lot of the kids that I worked with there who were in foster care, it was kinship placement.
Yeah.
I did not have any children who were placed in non-relative placements. And I think that is probably because of the community that I was in, really small community. There wasn't probably a lot of need for non-relative placements.
Or options.
Or options. Yeah. So a lot of the kids who I worked with were with relative placements.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was just different because you're there as their healthcare provider.
Right.
And so you don't know everything about their story. You know a little bit about their story.
Right.
And then working with their families and kind of hearing a little bit about what was going on, but not really knowing what was going on. You're kind of on the outskirts.
Right. But then it got personal for you.
It did.
And so tell me about that.
So one of my cousins had a baby in May of 2014, and we did not know that she was pregnant before she had the baby. And this cousin had struggled with substance abuse for years.
Yeah.
And so when the baby was born, everybody, I shouldn't say that, our family
Right.
felt like, okay, this baby needs some help.
Right.
And she had placed a baby for adoption a couple of years prior through private adoption. And so when he was born, I think the initial thought was maybe he could be adopted by that same
Right.
family. He was removed from, like, CPS did removal at birth. And when that other family said, we're not up, like, we don't have the space in our lives right now to have another child. One of my cousins stepped forward and took care of him, but she felt like this is not where he's meant to be. He's not meant to be here forever. And that was a hard choice for her to make.
For sure.
And I think it was really brave of her to say that, like, yes, we're willing to take care of him, but we still want to look for his forever home. And that was a brave thing for them to come forward and say.
You keep him out of foster care. You keep him with family.
Right.
And then but also knowing, I just does not feel like this is his spot.
So when he was born, I remember thinking, like, oh, it would be so great if he went to go live with his sister. Like, I remember thinking that, but also thinking there was just like that small voice of saying, if that doesn't work out, maybe. And that was it. Like, that was truly it. And they are in Nevada, so I didn't have daily interaction with them, but I would talk to my mom and say, like, oh, how's he doing? Kind of get check-ins. And there were several different placements that just didn't really work out. And I remember every time thinking, like, that just that little voice was getting louder. Like, you should step forward. You should step forward. And then finally, he was born in May. It was October. Was when I finally kind of had like that, like, hit against the wall saying, all right, this is your time. Like, you need to step forward. And I had no idea if it was even a possibility to foster across states.
State lines. Yeah.
Had no idea. Was completely ignorant to all of that. And so I called my cousin. I said, so do you think this is an option? And she just started crying. And we're thinking, okay, like, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
And then I got a phone call from the caseworker, like, the next day. It's like, so I hear you're looking for a placement. Is this even an option? Like, I don't even know.
Like, time out. I was exploring.
Right. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on right now.
Right.
And it just kind of, the ball just got rolling from there. And he was placed with me in February.
That's actually pretty quick.
It was pretty quick.
ICPC.
Now, I will say I was pushing that ICPC. I was, because once I knew it was a possibility and we have had an idea, like, we knew this could happen and the case was moving towards termination. Like, we knew that was the end.
Right.
That was what was going to happen. Then we wanted to get him here as soon as possible. So I was pushing. I mean, I was on the phone with the ICPC office in Nevada, the ICPC office in Texas. I was the squeaky wheel to make it happen. Yeah. Fast.
That's for everybody listening that may not. ICPC is what kind of the department that things go through when it's across state lines. So when it all happens within Texas, it's a little more simple. But when it happens across state lines, because then, one state, quote unquote, was this child's parent and was responsible for them. And now we're asking, Nevada's ultimately asking Texas to take on this child. And so there has to be some, and that can take so months. And if you are not
usually no less than 6 months.
Yeah. If you're not the squeaky wheel, you are not getting the oil and it's not happening.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. So after you got that call from the caseworker and the wheels start going in motion, sounds like then it was like locked in. I'm like, okay, I'm going for it. And what was going on in your head in your life at that point? Like, okay, I know how to fight a system to get this kid here. Okay, now he's here. Now I'm a first-time mom and all the things that go along with foster care.
Yeah, and I will say, because it was an ICPC placement, you don't have the same kind of support as you do if it's a in-state placement. In-state placement, the caseworker in the department does a lot of the work. I shouldn't say that. I had to apply for Medicaid for him for myself.
Right.
I had no idea how to do that. I'd never applied for Medicaid.
Right.
I didn't know whose income to put down. There was so much, and he got denied the first time, but he was already here. Like, this baby's got to go to the doctor. How do I was paying for cash for him to go to the doctor. There was just really, and my worker was like, yep, I don't really know.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck with that. Thanks. Yeah. So it really did feel like it was here's this baby, now figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot that I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to figure this out.
And ultimately, you're in the healthcare field. It's
Right.
not like you're coming as a complete outsider. You
Right.
kind of know at least the lingo and
Right.
some of the things,
But it was still hard, and
yeah.
it was difficult to figure out, what do I need to do to get
Uh-huh.
him Medicaid? I didn't know that they would pay for daycare, so I was just paying for daycare out of
Yeah.
pocket. I didn't find out until after I adopted him. Oh yeah, the state of Nevada could have paid for his daycare. I'm like, that would have saved me a lot of money.
I'm going to send you an invoice.
Seriously. So yeah, I will say, because it was ICPC, I had the Texas worker, but she wasn't really much help.
Right.
Because they really are just the eyes of the state.
Yeah.
They're not really doing anything
Well, and
beyond
ultimately,
reporting to Nevada.
They have
That's
no
it.
legal authority. 'Cause,
Right.
Yeah, he's a Nevada
Right.
citizen.
Right. And this was before the days of Zoom. So
Right.
I just had a phone call with the caseworker in
Yeah.
Nevada. That was it. There was no visits or anything like that. So yeah, it was definitely like, all right, guess
Yeah.
we're just. I used to tell people, like, I feel like I did more work to get my dog, because I felt like at least I had like paperwork. But
Right.
when my son came, I didn't even have paperwork until I got to the airport, and they texted me a copy of a birth certificate. I didn't
Wow.
have placement paperwork
Wildest
even
thing, right?
until I got to Texas. So yeah, we were just flying by the seat of our pants.
So
It was crazy.
yeah. So how was it, the transition from single woman building
Yeah.
a career to working a career, and now I'm a single mom of a
Yeah.
kid who probably
Yeah.
has brought some stuff into it
Mhm.
with all the things he had
Mhm.
been through. And
Right.
I mean, you're a pediatric therapist, so it kind of
Right.
gives you a leg up on at least some of the
Yeah.
disabilities, but ultimately,
I was lucky enough to be able to take 6 weeks off when he
Yeah.
first was placed with me. And that was the only time I did that with any placement. You don't know ahead of
Right,
time when
right.
another placement's coming, right? So I took 6 weeks off, and I needed that 6 weeks. He needed that 6 weeks
yeah,
because it was it was such a stark transition.
yeah,
And going back to work, I remember thinking, like, all right, now we got to get 2 people ready. Like, and that just that transition in and of itself, like taking care of somebody else.
yeah,
So I think like a new parent, just taking care of somebody else, and then I have to leave work or else I'm gonna have to pay, right? You're going to
Yeah,
pay
yeah,
for
yeah.
late to take care. You got to pay extra. Then just having that, I remember thinking, like, okay, now I'm stuck at home because after he goes to bed at 7:00,
yeah.
there's not another adult here. Like, I can't leave. So
Right.
I had to get everything done before 7
Yeah.
o'clock, or ask my friend to come over, like, hey, can you just come over here while he's sleeping so I can
Yeah.
go to the store, or,
Right.
whatever.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I just remember thinking, like, now I can't leave. Like, I just
It's
literally
like they
can't leave.
control your lives.
It is like they control your life. Exactly.
I know.
And that seems so crazy now. 'Cause I'm like, yeah, no, I am really stuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that was a big transition, because I was used to being able to go to the grocery store at night.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
No, that was not happening.
Yeah.
He was asleep.
Uh-huh.
And thankfully he was a very easy, in comparison to all my other placements, he was very easy transition wise. And I think it was because he had my sole focus for 6 weeks,
Yeah.
and there was no competing factors
Right.
for him,
Right.
you know.
It does make
So
a big
thankfully
difference.
that
Yeah.
6 weeks was a lot. But I remember going to church with him the first time. That was a trip. That was a full-on trip. There was a lot of screaming involved.
Yeah.
A lot of screaming involved.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So as you got into it, you kind of knew this was more of
Yeah,
a permanent
I did.
situation. So then in your head then, were you just like, I'm just doing this because it's for family, like one and done? I don't ever plan
So-
on doing this for people I'm not related to.
No,
Where was that
I had the intention of, I knew that I felt it would be about, I knew that I wanted to have more than one child. I knew I wanted more than one child in the family. So I had the intention of going and doing non-relative placements eventually.
Right.
I didn't know exactly when,
Right.
but I did have the intention of continuing to foster.
Gotcha. After that was just kind of your,
Mm-hmm.
almost like the push
The
that got
push.
you in fast.
Yes.
Been thinking about it. And
Yeah.
So next ones you start saying yes, because I mean we've
Yep.
talked about it before on this podcast, but ultimately you say I'm open.
Yep.
You can give it parameters,
Mhm.
certain age
Mhm.
groups, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then ultimately you're fielding phone calls and saying yes or no based on
Exactly.
whether it seems like a fit. So
Yep.
did you wait till after you had adopted him and then start opening it up to?
I did. I waited. He was 3 when I first took my first non-relative placement.
Yeah.
And at that time I thought, okay, I cannot take more than one child. Like, I already have him. I can't take more than one child. Like that's going to be like so much. And so I had 2 single placements back to back. And then I was kind of open. I'm like, well, I guess I could probably, like, once I had those 2 non-relative placements and I felt like I had my feet more grounded in what exactly does this look like, then I was willing to take a sibling set. So I got a sibling set. So then, my capacity was then 2 children.
Yeah.
And then those 2 left and I had 2 more. And then a new baby was born. And then I was up to 3. Like, so it was just kind of snowballed from there. And it was all because a new sibling was born. And so when a new sibling would be born, my number would go up.
Yeah.
Because I never wanted to turn down a sibling. And so eventually
that's how they
6 kids in the house. They just pulled me into it. Yes. I mean, obviously I had the ability to say yes or no. And I do remember the somebody from our my agency saying, "Are you sure?
Right.
Are you sure you want to do this?" I'm like, yeah, I am.
So rewind just a little bit, but like you first have him, then you're considering fostering. What were your fears back then?
Yeah.
What were confirmed? What were just, fears that you actually ultimately resolved and figured out? What were some of the things you were processing back then?
My biggest fear was my lack of support.
Yeah.
I knew that I had this one really good friend who lives next door. But that was it. Everybody else was just people who wasn't somebody I was going to put down as an emergency contact.
Right.
Or who I could ask to just come over at any moment in time.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest fear was support of, I didn't even know what support I needed. Right. I just knew that I needed something. Yeah. So before I started, that was a big fear. And then also just becoming a single parent, and a single parent by choice. And I think that brought some weight to it of I'm intentionally creating a single parent household.
Right.
And what does that mean? And am I up to the challenge of being a single parent with no support system?
Right.
No, I mean, I had some support from my family, but my family lives in Nevada.
Yeah.
So they can be on the phone.
Right.
But they're not physically going to be there to help, So that was really daunting. And then also just thinking of just societally, what does it mean to have, a single parent household?
Right.
I will say the support, it took me a while to build my support system. And I had to really be intentional about asking
I was going to say, I think healthcare providers in general, and then people that get into foster care, were typically the ones that give help, but we're not super great at asking for help.
No, not great at asking for help at all. It took a lot for me to ask. And I will say, I mean, I know it was God who placed my daycare provider in my life. It was an in-home daycare, and she's now one of my best friends and goes on trips with us and has been a huge rock in all of this, has taken care of all of the babies who I fostered, and was always willing to. I would call her at like 10 o'clock. I'm like, do you have a placement for tomorrow?
Yeah.
For a 6-week-old.
I got a phone
By the
call.
way, I've got a newborn today. any chance I can drop him off. And she was always willing to take him. So I think building that support, so that really became the biggest issue. Yeah. I think the stigma around being a single parent, that I chose to ignore. I chose to just be like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not. And it wasn't even something that people were saying to me. I think it was just my perception of how would people react to me being a single parent. Yeah. So it was more my own perception that I just had to get over really fast. Yeah. Like, you're doing a good job. Yeah, you're doing a good job. You're doing your best. This child's healthy. This child's happy.
Right.
Move it along.
Right.
So that I had to get over on my, that I just had to internally just tell myself, nobody's judging you. Yeah. But I felt like I was going to get judgment ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And I just had to tell myself, like, you're doing a good job.
Yeah. You're doing what you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. And God wouldn't place these children in my life if they weren't meant to be in my life. And I had to have that, like, conversation with myself, of this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't meant to happen. Right. And so that kind of got rid of that fear. Right. The support was the bigger issue, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's fears.
I mean, that's across the board for all foster, whether two-parent household or one, but even infinitely more when you have a one-parent household. Because, you go down sick, there's no husband picking up the slack on the side. You still have 6 kids you have to take care of. And so you have to have somebody that can, step in and help out. And
Yeah, for sure. Or even just one of the other children needs to go to the emergency room.
Yeah.
I got to be able to call somebody, or I'm hauling everybody.
Yeah.
You know,
And then
everybody's got to
they're picking
come
up
with
all
me.
the other things that are at the
Right,
hospital and bringing
exactly.
them.
Or I had to learn, like, okay, you have to call somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to come stay with these other kids
Yeah.
for you to be able to go, to the
Take
ER or whatever.
Yeah. That support piece is one of the things that we talk a lot about at the Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
One, helping people realize they don't have to foster. They can fill in one of these roles.
Right.
But then also pushing on these foster families to be like, you can't do this by yourself.
Right.
I mean, and you can listen to us now, or you can wait till you hit the brick wall. But either way, you're going to be needing support. You need
support.
You can plan it before, or you can, have it in the emergency situation.
And I will say I had, when I first started my non-relative placements, I was just with the state, because that's who I had to get licensed with for the ICPC. Yeah. And I didn't have a lot of support. When I moved to an agency, then I was like, oh my gosh, there is support. Like, you have people who can help me with transportation. Like, oh my gosh, you're like that was such a blessing to have that, because I didn't have that with the state.
Babysitters and
like I had no idea. I didn't use respite until I was on my 4th placement. I didn't even know it was even an option. Like, what?
Wow.
So I didn't use respite at all until placement number 4. Yeah. And I was like, all right, I need some help. Uh-huh. Yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah. The babysitting thing is huge.
It is.
And I think a lot of agencies should, and I think some of them are now, but agencies should require that before you get your first placement. Like, you have to have a babysitter that is verified, has gone through the process, because it's inevitable. You get a placement and something happens. Like there's a funeral, there's a car problem, there's like something. It's always something right after you get a placement. And so then you either are scrambling or you're already ready to go, and you just get to call that person and be like, hey, I need you.
For sure. You need somebody. So it was nice to have that list, like a list the agency provided, like, here are all these people who are willing to babysit for you.
So obviously first placement, a little different than the other ones, but tell me what your view of foster or a biological family going in was. And then, did that evolve over time?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know that biological family and foster parents had any interaction. Before I started, I really thought that it was 2 separate things.
Right.
That you had the foster parents who were just caring for the kids, and then you had the biological families who were working their plan or whatever. Right. Never the 2 mixed in my mind.
Well, for a long time, the state kind of...
Right. And so that was my view. I had no idea. And because my first placement was ICPC, there was no parent visits.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of that. So then when my first non-relative placement, I was like, I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
And I wasn't prepared for interaction. Like, I really had no idea.
Yeah.
And the very first visit, they asked me to take the baby to a relative's home and for me to supervise the visit.
Oh my God.
And I thought, what? What are you talking about? Right. And I did push back. I said, what if they don't want to give her back? Like, what if they don't want me to, like, what if they don't, like, what happens?
Yeah.
Like, there's nobody there. I don't have any authority.
Right.
Like, what happens? So I had to push back and say, no, I want a caseworker there. Like, I want somebody else there with me. I have no problem taking her to somebody's house, but I don't want to be the only person here.
But also, if I'm supervising, you can pay me because I'm not an unpaid employee.
Right. So I did push back, and I did have a worker there. And thankfully, they only did that one time. After that, it was at one of the visit centers.
Yeah.
But I remember after that first meeting at the family's house, the next meeting, I wrote a letter to the mom, and I had included pictures. At this point, I was still printing off pictures. I hadn't moved on to my Google photo album that I later shared with families. And the caseworker was very upset with me that I wrote a letter telling, and all I did was tell her how the baby was doing. And I said, oh, she weighs this much.
Yeah.
The caseworker was upset that I wrote a letter to her and said, you don't do any of that without going through me first.
So wild.
Yes. And I thought, okay, like, I thought I was trying to bridge like this gap. And then I felt like there was
you're both parents of this child.
Right.
Wouldn't it be?
And I wasn't including I literally was including how much she weighed. And this was a baby. There wasn't a whole lot of sensitive information, And I remember after that thinking, okay, like, the caseworker made it very known everything has to go through her. So I did that for a while. And the next placement came along, and I immediately, the very first meeting with the caseworker, I'm like, all right, I need you to tell me, what am I allowed to talk to? Like, I learned so much from that first placement of what do I need to do? What do I need
Yeah.
to do to facilitate this? And after that first placement, I started having a lot of really good interactions with family that I wouldn't have dreamed would have
Right.
happened before, where I was willing to, now I've got a Google Voice number, a Google photo album, where I'm saying, here's the Google Voice number.
Yeah.
If they want to text, they can text, as long as the caseworker was okay with it.
Right.
Here's a Google photo album. I'm going to upload photos,
Right.
I don't know, once a week.
Yeah.
And they can, so that they have that contact with their child. But also had contact with me.
Yeah.
And they were able to ask me questions, and I was able to get to know the family, and we were able to go to doctor's visits together. And that was something I would have never envisioned before.
Yeah.
And so I really wasn't prepared for building a relationship with family, and not necessarily providing support outside of just saying, I'm going to be I'm taking care of your child. Your child is safe.
Yeah.
And I'm not a threat to you.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge barrier. I had to figure that out on my own, because I don't think anybody ever really prepared me for that.
No.
And the families were all receptive to me.
That's great.
Which was good.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not the case always.
Not for always.
Right. But parents were always really receptive, and I really wanted to make it clear, I'm not here to work against you.
Yeah.
And that, I think, went a long way with the families.
100%. Because I think that's on that side of the coin. We haven't interviewed biological family yet. We will at some point, but I think that's the misnomer on their side is that, and I know in some of the cases we had, they actually were able to verbalize that later down the line. And I was like, I'm not your I'm not your competition. Like, I'm not trying to, it's not a game that we're scoring points on. And and I think once, like what you did, that it just kind of disarms the situation to where they can just realize that you're both just for this child.
Right.
And that's the goal. It's really them healing and staying healthy and landing where they're supposed to land. But ultimately, neither one of you have control over what happens.
Right.
That's the judge.
Right. Exactly. And I think, now I still have contact with all of my placements except for one. But all of my placements, I still have contact with them and their families. Either it's the biological parents or the family that they ended up going to, a family member who they ended up going to. But I have contact with all of them and continue to have a relationship with all of them. And they've been a big support, they come to my children's first communion and to their birthday parties, And so I think also just knowing that I wasn't just going to back out once the child was back with them. Like that I was here for the child for the duration.
Right.
Not just because I was fostering them.
Right.
But because I wanted their family to succeed.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, a really big shift in my thinking.
Yeah.
That I'm not that I ever felt like I was pitted against family members, but I wanted them to know that I wasn't pitting myself against them.
Well, I think the more I've been in this space for 20 years, and it definitely wasn't that way when I've started. Right. It's gotten more that way, but I think it's more heavy on the foster agencies have done a better job of saying, hey, build a relationship with biofamily. I mean, obviously there's some cases where you just can't. They're not safe.
Right.
But majority of the cases you can. I think the state really hasn't caught up with that.
I agree.
Think in their words, they say it, but in their actions, they don't. Because on some level, it complicates their lives.
It does.
Because then I know stuff that before I would not know.
Right.
Which means I can speak into things that they're doing that I'm like, this doesn't make sense because I know that. And so I think that's where, not all, very much not all. There's amazing caseworkers, but there are some that enjoyed that God complex of I have control of all the toys.
Exactly.
And I'll let you know which ones you can play with and which ones you can play with.
Right. Even that first placement, I was not encouraged to go to court. I wasn't. I mean, I was told about it, but I remember asking, like, should I come? And the caseworker saying, no, we got it. Learned my lesson. Never did that again. Never did that again.
Always go to court.
Always went to court. Didn't miss a court date after that first placement.
Yeah.
Learned a lot.
All the things, because I get it. Like, there are some foster families out there that, and I think those were the ones that end up on the news, and everybody has a stereotype of them that are in it for the money and they're manipulative and they all the things. But the vast majority of foster families are in it because they want kids to be safe and protected and land in the right spot.
Right.
But for whatever reason, the state still has this view of, like, foster parents are always biased.
Right.
We can't listen to their voice. I mean, I remember the first time I went to court with one of our kids, And I like dressed up because this is when
Mhm.
we went in person.
Mhm.
I dressed up and I was like, obviously I'm going to be like up here
Yeah.
somewhere close. And
Yeah.
they're like, nobody
Yep.
even acknowledged my
Mhm.
existence. And then I'm
Mhm.
sitting in the back and listening to these people who had been in my house maybe an hour in the
Right.
past 6
Right.
months talk about the child I'd been caring for 24/7.
Right. Right.
I was like, wait a minute.
Right. And then sometimes things are said, you're like, that's not right.
That's not true.
That's not true. Where did you get that from?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But you can't say anything
No.
because nobody asks unless they ask you. Right.
Funny though, I did in one of our cases. I was in the audience, and it was a kid that had been with us, and then she had come back,
Mm-hmm.
and they were all talking about placing her with a certain relative, and everybody seemed okay with it, even the child's ad litem.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that family had an open CPS case because of the
Right,
last time I
right,
had her,
Right.
and so I stood up in the back of the court because they were literally about to drop the gavel on moving
Yeah.
the child that was in my
Yeah.
home over
Yeah.
there, and I was like, Judge, like. They have open CPS cases. He looks
Right.
at the ad litem and he's like, you might want to go talk to her.
Yeah.
But that's the sad part is
It
I'm
is.
like, on some level, a lot of times the foster family, I mean, if they have a CASA, it helps a ton.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that ad litem, man, they are not.
I've had
most of
one
them-
really good ad litem.
I've had two
Yeah.
good ad litems, but the rest of them, they were a name on a manila folder.
Right. They never
didn't
even saw the
care.
kid.
Mm-mm,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't care.
Yep.
I had one guy sit in my living room and like the little girl I had at the time was like, I don't know, 18 months, toddling. And she went over to him to like, and like crawled up on him. And he was like almost recoiled.
Withdrawing,
I'm like,
right.
why are you
Right. Why are you doing this?
Why is
Yeah.
this-
You're in the wrong
Clearly
job
you
here.
don't like
Right.
children.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
They can make
But
such a huge difference.
yeah,
So.
that's one of the reforms of many.
Mhm.
But that ad litem
Mhm.
space, one, they need to be paid more. And
Right.
two, they need to actually want to be there.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be just some fallback because
Exactly.
they can't find work doing
Mhm.
lawyer stuff another way.
Agreed.
Because it really costs children a lot.
For sure.
You said something when we were talking before that there are some cases that kind of sit with you
Mm-hmm.
more than others.
Mm-hmm.
What did you mean by that? And kind of how did that impact your journey?
Yeah, I think when you see the decisions that are made and you know at the time it's probably not the best decision. And then time goes on and it really wasn't the best decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, the trajectory of this child's life could have been so much different.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't because of the decisions that were made. And maybe they were ill-informed decisions or they were just decisions made because we wanted the time frame. Like the time frame was coming up. We wanted to move the case along.
Right.
And you see just the long-lasting impact on the families who may not have been prepared really to have this child back.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't ready.
Yeah.
And so because they weren't ready, it's just like that added stress on the family. And so you see those cracks happening really soon.
Yep.
And then they're still caring for this child and those cracks are just getting bigger and bigger. And there's not time and there's not resources to really work on the issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see the child and it's like, oh, so much could have been different. So much could have been different if the focus truly was on the child and what was best for the child. And oftentimes I felt like it wasn't.
Yeah.
That a lot of times the decisions were what is easiest.
What fits
sometimes,
the timeline.
What fits the timeline
Yeah.
a lot of times. And it was just, I remember one time these children were being reunified and I knew the family wasn't ready. And the caseworker knew the family wasn't ready. She's like, well, they've got to do it sometime.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, but they've got so much they need to work on right now. And now we're just throwing this other stressor on. And if we would have just given them time to either thrive or truly prepare or get the help they really needed, not just ticking the boxes in the plan. And then it's just so disheartening.
Yeah.
It's so disheartening because you know that the trajectory could have been different.
Yeah. I literally we were similar situation where like the writing was all on the wall. All the adults in the room knew the writing was on the wall, but there wasn't enough to terminate. There wasn't enough to keep a kid in care.
Right.
And literally I had an attorney in the hallway be like, well, we just have to give her enough time to do something wrong. And I'm like, do you realize what you're saying? Like we're going to send a toddler back with people that at some point are going to fail and do something that's probably going to harm this child.
Right.
And we're all just going to wait for that to happen.
Yep.
And it was just like, How do you sleep at night?
I remember a friend of mine who was a social worker, not here in Texas, somewhere else. I remember her telling me, we're just the catcher's mitt. We're here to catch them. We're not here to prevent anything. And she said that was like when she could not continue on being a caseworker because she felt like she was always just waiting for the shoe to drop, not really doing anything about it.
100%.
And that's what I feel a lot of times in these cases. We send these kids home to an unstable household. These parents who are trying.
It looks good on our books because we reunified.
Because we reunified. Well, we reunified into this faulty system. And then, then what? Then we're just waiting.
Yeah.
And then the kid, is just kind of being strung along. And then there might be another removal a couple of years down the road.
The stats on that is this is on the state's website. 5-year recidivism is like 43%.
Yeah.
So almost half of the kids that go home are coming back out within 5 years.
Right. Because they're not ready. Because either the family's not ready, they don't have the support that they need. They haven't had the mental health support, specifically mental health support.
And then when those kids come back out, there's even
much
more
worse.
Trauma.
Right. It's so much worse.
Whereas if we would have just done the first reunification well.
Right.
Or supported or, whatever it needed to be, then we wouldn't have kids coming back out.
Right.
But that's where some of the frustration, I think, probably you felt too, was just it's a numbers game.
It is. And that's what I think I always felt like. And I remember saying to myself, you have to remember this isn't about the kids and that these decisions are not necessarily about the child. And
even though that's what the whole system is supposed to be about.
Theoretically, but those of us who have been in there we know how decisions are made, and it's not about the child because they don't even really talk about the child.
No, they talk about the parents the whole time.
Right. And it's not that I'm not for reunification. I am.
Yeah.
But it has to be done well. And we don't have the societal supports for families to just throw these kids back into the system.
And into their home. More calls come in.
Right. And there's also nobody really checking. I mean, there is people checking in, but you're only checking in once a month.
Yeah.
Maybe not at that.
Really. Yeah.
But
could just be doing it on Zoom at this point too.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was really frustrating and something that I really had to grapple with for a long time and still grapple with.
Yeah. I mean, sadly it is that, like what you did, that's how foster parents survive, is they make that mental shift in their brain where they're like, I can't keep expecting a system to do something that it's not going to do. Yep. Which is put the kid first.
Right.
And once I can make peace with that and still know that I'm supposed to be doing it, I had a lady that taught us to be foster parents. I've talked about her before on here, Linda, but I called her one time in the midst of one of those, like, why is they not? And she's like, listen, you can go crazy worrying about all the things that the system is not doing, or you can control what's happening in your house, but you can't do both.
Can't do both.
And I was like, okay, like I can only have, control and somewhat control over what's going on in my home. So I can love them and I can take care of them and I can connect with bio family. But ultimately, all the rest of it can be frustrating, but I can't do anything about it.
And I think even making peace, it's not even so much making peace, more than just knowing your limitations and what can you change in this moment, in this phase in your life. And then I think the shift of advocacy can occur. Yeah. Right. But you have to know the problem in order to really be able to advocate for change. And so I think it's really hard for people who haven't experienced firsthand the system to truly understand everything that needs to be advocated for. Yeah. Because there's just so much. There's so much that needs to change. Yeah. So I think it was just that shift in my mind of, okay, this is the fight that I'm going to fight right now. Right. I'm going to fight for this child to have the best experience right now. Right. And I can only control right now. Yeah. And I have no control over what happens. There's a quote that I remember seeing, and it was sometime while I was fostering, and it was something along the lines of, God has been good to this child so far, and he will be good to him no matter where they lay their head at night. And I had to sit with that and think, all right, God is with them no matter what. Systems may fail, but God's not going to fail them. Right. And I remember thinking okay, I have to just kind of give that over. Right. Like I can control right now in this one moment, and even control is a hard word. Yeah, it's not really control.
Not really control. Stewarding.
Right. I can steward for right now, but then I just have to give it. I have to give that away. Yeah. I have to give that into faith.
Otherwise, you can't move on.
You can't
to the next one, or you can't take care of the ones that are your forever ones.
Right. Right. Yeah. You have to put full faith that God's going to be taking care of them no matter where they are.
I've seen a lot of people, like strong women go into the system wanting to fix it or
Right.
wanting to like,
Right.
I'm going to, and on some level it breaks most
Right.
everybody.
Right.
But there are, pieces that we then,
Mm-hmm.
start, as far as like my piece, there was parts of it that broke me, but then there was also
Right.
parts like, okay, there's this gap between the church and the state. I can do
Right.
something about that one.
Right.
Like I'll work in that one. I can't
Right.
control the judge or the
Right.
ad items or all the other things,
Mm-hmm.
but I can impact the fact that the church doesn't know what's going
Right.
on and the state doesn't want the church involved. Like I
Right.
can build that bridge. And
Right.
that's what, we've been able to do
Yeah.
on that piece. But
Yeah.
yeah, you just kind of have to, I think there's a lot of very strong people that go into this space and they have a high sense of justice. And then they
Right.
get in and they're like, it's so unjust.
It
It's
is.
so unjust.
It is. I know we're laughing about it now, but it's like, it's so frustrating in the moment, right? It's so
Yeah.
frustrating in the moment. And I think living with that frustration and understanding that frustration and being prepared for that frustration, which you can't really prepare for until you've been frustrated.
Right.
Like just knowing like, I just need to be able to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And help this child right now.
Yeah.
And
And
be the
that's
best
where
carer I
also
can
having
give.
community, not only with people that are outside and just supporting your family, but having community with those that are in the game.
100%.
Because then you feel seen. Then you
Right.
feel like, okay,
Right.
I'm not crazy. Like
Right.
there are other people who look at this and feel this and be like, this is not fair.
Right.
You have to have those other voices of people that are in the mix too
Yes.
to help
Yeah.
you
For sure.
endure.
Yes. Endure the long haul.
Yeah,
for sure.
persevere.
Yes.
So you mentioned we've talked about the after of fostering. So you're done now. 6 you can't have anymore.
Right.
Fostering.
Mhm.
So what's the long term, where are you looking a year from now, 5 years from now?
Yeah.
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 What are your kind of, I guess, where's all that landing for you right now? What goes through your head?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I had to really redefine my definition of myself whenever the foster care journey ended, because it had been part of my identity for so many years. From, gosh, my son it was probably nine-ish years I was fostering.
Yeah.
9 or 10 years. So to then redefine myself of like, okay, I'm not a foster parent, but I can still fight for foster. I can still fight for what these kids need, you know, and so becoming a support for other foster parents was really important to me, in whatever capacity that, you can do that in, whether it's just as a mentor or providing, babysitting or whatever. Because like my push for helping kids hasn't changed.
Right.
But how I'm doing that is different. And I also have these 6 kids who I need to guide down the road of life. And all of that comes into play. Whereas I felt like with foster care, there's somebody there once a month coming in, doing a check-in, and then it all just stops.
Yeah.
And it all stopped kind of abruptly. Because there was somebody in my house
for
10 years, and then there was nobody. And I remember thinking like, I can put stuff on the floor in the pantry now. Like I remember thinking that
I could have expired
nobody's going to look at my spices. I don't have to lock up my meds. Like I still do it though. I mean, my meds are still in the lockbox. And there's really nothing on the floor in my pantry. Right. Don't ask me why. It's just like that's how it is.
Trained you well.
Exactly. But then it's like, okay, now I've got this child who needs therapy, and now I got to figure it out. Now I got to figure it out. How do I get all these services now? And what services do I even need? And how can I anticipate what their needs are? Like, so now it's just that living with the after is really so much harder than the during. Because during the actual time in foster care is such a blip.
Yes.
Hopefully a blip on most kids' life spectrum. Right.
But the trauma doesn't end.
The trauma doesn't end. Right. And sometimes the trauma doesn't even appear until after.
Yep. Stability comes and then like, here's all the things I've been holding back.
Exactly. And it's like, whoa, what happened here? And now I'm like, all right, now we need a lot of help.
Yeah.
now we need the support.
The crazy thing is, as far as mental health services that are covered by the insurance that our kids get,
so limited. It's so hard to find a therapist.
No,
who will just take medication.
We paid out of pocket because we couldn't find one for one of our kiddos that needed some therapy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, their insurance we couldn't find one. Our
Mhm.
insurance, we couldn't find
Mhm.
one. And we ended up cash pay because most of
Right.
them are, most of the good ones.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there's some out there, but they're, 6
They're
months waiting
so
list or
booked
whatever.
because there's such a lack of
Trauma coverage.
providers.
Yeah.
And then providers who actually do well with kids, and are trauma informed and
Yeah.
know all the issues that come from being in foster care and being adopted and all of that.
Yeah.
And then you've got kids who trigger kids. Like,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
so, that's the real. So I feel like right now my time is so limited with my kids that I can't do the advocacy that I want to do. I'm looking forward to some stability.
Right.
I don't know when that comes.
I mean,
They might have to be out of the
teen
house.
years are coming,
They might have to be out of the house. I don't know. My baby's 5. That seems like a really far
But
off.
you have
But
you're almost
yes.
hitting teens, so then
The oldest is. Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
So
trauma comes in waves.
it does
And
come
those
in waves.
hormones
And it
kinda, for
screws
whatever
everything up.
reason,
Messes
it
everything
reveals
up.
new things.
It does. It does. And I don't think that I was fully prepared
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Even though people would always tell me, oh, like, parenting kids with trauma is different. Like, I don't know any different. Like,
Right.
I don't know any different. They're
Right.
all of my kids,
Right.
were from foster care. So, I'm sure it is different, but dang, it's hard.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is hard.
Yeah.
And nobody prepares you, but I don't know. I never had the other. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So how much different is it? I don't know. I think it's all hard.
It's all
hard in
have
different
both,
ways.
and I would just say
right?
it's all hard.
It's all hard.
It's just different hards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
For sure. So if you could sit across the table from somebody single,
mhm.
back similar to you, back early 30s, not married, but
Right.
feeling this like,
Right.
I want to do more than just be great at my career. What would you tell them?
I think number one is if you have the desire, you can do it, but you have to have a support system. You cannot do this alone,
Right.
no matter what. And I really think that most agencies are now kind of forcing people to get some kind of support system. The bigger support system you can get, the better.
Right.
And
not only other foster parents.
other
because
foster
drowning
parents.
people
Yes.
cannot save drowning
Exactly. Exactly. But also recognizing that this is your journey.
Yeah.
And it's not your family's journey.
Yeah.
This isn't something that they chose. It's something that you're choosing.
Right.
And so they may or may not support you in the way that you want them to support you. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Right.
But I think you do have to understand that you are choosing this. And so they may not show up in the way that you think
Right.
that
And
they would
that's
show
okay.
up. And that's okay.
Right.
And I think just knowing that going in,
Yeah.
that this is your journey.
Yeah.
This is your choice. Your family, this is not, nobody else in your life chose this intentionally.
Right.
You were doing this. So I think number one, you can do this. Number two, you also have to know your limits.
Mhm.
I would not have been prepared to take 6 kids from the get-go. I couldn't have taken 2 kids from the get-go.
Right.
1 kid was all I could do at the beginning.
And all that needs
You
to
can be firm on
Yeah.
that. You can say no.
Yeah.
I know so many foster parents who felt like they had to say yes to a
Yes,
placement.
because there's some agencies that try to
They
get them
push
in.
it so much.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
And if your agency pushes back, that's not the agency for you.
That's a sign.
Your agency has to support you and what you can handle.
Exactly.
And so I think you have to know your limitations. Can you accept 1? Can you accept 2? Have that support in place. Do you have a daycare that's on call? Do you have after school care that's on
Yeah.
call? Who can be your emergency contact? So I think the more you have set up as your village
Yeah.
going in, the easier a time it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't discourage somebody. I would say if you have the desire and the drive, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
It will be easier if you have other people who you can count on
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
and who can go down the journey with you,
Yeah.
even if they're not 100%
Yeah.
on board with foster care, if they can provide some support.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think one of
You
the
can do it.
other things is like you talked about it, but you have to make intentional asks.
yes.
You can't just expect people to say, "Oh, you're fostering," and And
Right.
people, the best well-meaning, will be like, let me know how I can help.
Right.
And ultimately, that puts the onus on you to figure out
Right.
how can they help. But if you come up from the beginning saying, okay, I'm going to need like 2 or 3 pool of babysitters that I can
Right.
pull from, because not
Right.
every babysitter is going to be available when you
Right.
need them. But knowing like I'm going to make intentional ask of my coworker or my neighbor or my friend and ask them if they'll go through the process and become verified as a babysitter. Or,
Right.
hey, we have OT every Tuesday and I can't be at pickup and at, pick up for OT. Can that be, making
Right.
those intentional asks? And I found when I actually finally humbled myself and asked for help, people are excited to be a
Right.
part of it because they, for whatever reason, they're not fostering. Maybe they don't feel called to it. Maybe they're too scared of it. But you give them a lane to start helping, and you're actually helping them do their part too.
I think people don't know how to help. I mean, they don't know exactly what do you need. When somebody's having a baby, we throw a baby shower and people give stuff, right? But when somebody's fostering, I think people don't really know, what do you need?
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to finally ask for something. I'm like, you know what? I could really use XYZ, you know? And I think that was on me. I felt like if I'm taking on this foster care role, that I felt like I had to provide everything.
Yes.
But you don't have to.
No.
You can ask people, and people are more than happy to help you.
Yeah.
But you have to ask. They don't know what you need until you tell them. And sometimes it could just be, can I just get a meal delivered?
Yeah.
Can you just Uber Eats me something or DoorDash me something?
Yep.
Because you're overwhelmed and you just need a meal.
Yeah.
For everybody to eat. So just even if it's just something as simple as I just need somebody to make a decision about dinner tonight.
Or just come over, like grab a coffee and come over and just sit in my living room and just hang out. Because I'm stuck here with all these tiny tyrants all day and I need adult conversation.
I need adult conversation, right? Exactly. Or just come offer to just sit at the house while I can go do something.
Yeah,
right?
like take a shower.
Take a shower, do something, or just go to the movies, right? Or just something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think really intentionally asking people and being clear, not just because people will say, I'm here if you need anything.
Yeah, and then you never ask.
Start asking.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that's why I'm excited about this month and all the single moms, because I think a lot of us know single ladies and even some single guys in our lives who we see them with, different kids and we don't maybe necessarily know. And we're like, how do they do that? But it also, one, is an encouragement to single people like, hey, you can do this.
Right.
And two, to all the people in their village, like, go volunteer with a specific request.
Right.
Like, hey, I can babysit Saturday night. Does this work for you this weekend or next weekend?
Right.
Hey, I'm making, we had burgers on the grill. We've got leftovers. Can I bring them over? Or, something. Those are just super easy ways that may seem very nominal to somebody who's doing it, but hugely helpful to the family, to the single mom who's like, didn't make it to the grocery store this week. And she's like, we're having cereal again tonight.
Exactly. I remember when one of my placements, I had a friend who just came over and she just had toys.
Yeah.
She's like, we're getting rid of these toys. Here you go. And they were age appropriate for the kid who I had. I was like, thank God.
Yeah,
thank God. Because, they get bored of what you have.
Yeah,
rotate the toys around. So I had so many people willing to do that.
Come over and clean the house, fold the laundry, anything. So small things.
Anything.
Mow the yard.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, that's great. Well, Susan, thank you so much. This has been incredible.
Thank you.
And hey, thanks for tuning in to Running Toward. We're excited to spend this month celebrating some amazing single moms who are out there taking care of kiddos. So stay tuned and share this with a friend who maybe has been considering it, or a village that can wrap around a single mom in your community. We'll see you again next week.